Sometimes you hear a statistic that just stops you in your tracks.
Uh-huh.
Like this one. The Philippines, right, actually topped Pornhub in 2023 for average time spent per visit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, get this, 11 minutes and 15 seconds average.
That's a long time.
And the really wild part, female viewership is way higher than male, 58%.
Okay, now that really bucks the trend. Usually it's the other way around, quite significantly.
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this, because today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty complex.
Yeah.
The growing involvement of Filipinos in the internet-based adult entertainment industry.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, how just those numbers, those stats, they sort of crack open this window onto a whole web of things. You've got economic pressures, changing cultural stuff, and just how much tech is everywhere now. It's not just numbers, it's about the real forces pushing them.
Right. It makes you ask, okay, what's really going on there? What leads to that kind of engagement?
Yeah.
What are the stories behind it? The motivations? And how does it all sit with, the culture in the Philippines, which has some pretty strong traditional values.
Mm-hmm.
So for this deep dive, we've been looking at sociological studies, industry reports, news articles, trying to get the full picture.
Right. Piece it all together.
Yeah. Our mission, basically, is to understand what's driving this and, all the complexities that come with it.
And that brings us straight to a big question. How big is this involvement, really? Getting solid numbers is, it's tough. Super tough.
Right, because it's often underground, isn't it?
Exactly. But we do have indicators, things that suggest it's pretty significant.
Like, there was this estimate way back in 2006, actually.
Yeah.
Even then, they figured the underground porn industry there was pulling in maybe $1 billion a year.
$1 billion back in 2006.
Yeah, which put them like 8th globally.
Yeah.
Up there with Canada, Taiwan, places like that.
Wow. That's much larger than I would have guessed for that time.
And they even pinpointed hubs, Angeles, Olongapo, parts of Manila like Pasay, Makati, Quezon City.
So specific hotspots even then.
Yeah. And if you fast forward to now, with that Pornhub data.
The number 2 globally for traffic in 2023.
Right. And almost all of it, like 97%, is people accessing it on their phones. Which
just shows how, technology, mobile tech especially, has just amplified everything, made it so accessible.
And again, that female viewership stat, 58% in 2023.
It's just so unusual. It really makes the Philippines stand out. The highest proportion of female visitors on Pornhub, period.
Plus, the search term Pinay Filipino woman is consistently popular there.
Right, suggesting a pretty steady demand specifically for content featuring Filipinas.
Yeah, and what's interesting there is, how does that high consumption square with the public values, the societal norms? We'll get into that more, but
it hints at a gap, doesn't it, between maybe private behavior and public discourse.
Definitely. So, okay, let's talk motivations.
Yeah.
Why are people getting involved in creating this content? What are the main drivers?
Well, economics just keeps coming up as like the number one reason.
Yeah, I figured.
I mean, think about it. The daily minimum wage in some areas, it's just leagues below what someone might potentially earn, even in a short time creating online adult content.
That gap must be huge.
It creates a really powerful pull, especially if you don't have many other job options, which is the reality for a lot of people in more marginalized communities.
And the tech thing we mentioned.
Yeah.
Everyone's got smartphones now. Internet access is getting better. That lowers the bar to actually making the stuff yourself.
Absolutely. It massively lowers the barrier to entry. You don't necessarily need a big studio or anything.
Just a phone and a connection. Theoretically.
Pretty much. And you see different kinds of operations too. Like there's this thing where foreign producers subcontract local filmmakers.
Right, you mentioned that.
Yeah, and reports suggest they could be earning like up to $1,000 for just one scene.
Wow. Okay. So it's more organized maybe.
More organized, yeah. But potentially still exploitative, And then on the other end, you've got individuals.
Like on OnlyFans or social media.
Exactly. People creating and selling their own content directly. It's a completely different model, much more decentralized than those older networks.
Okay, so that leads us nicely into like what the academics are saying, the research side of things. It's still developing, I guess.
It is, yeah. It's a growing field, but maybe not as extensive as you'd think, given the scale. But the perspectives there are really crucial for understanding the social, the cultural layers.
Right, because these aren't just stats, they're people, dynamics.
Exactly.
So I saw something about research on the Twitter alter community. What's that about?
Yeah, that's really interesting work. Basically, researchers found that these alter accounts, they're like anonymous or alternative profiles on Twitter. People use them to explore different sides of themselves. And sometimes that includes making and sharing amateur adult content.
Right.
And the research suggests that for some groups, particularly maybe marginalized groups like gay men, these online spaces can actually be really important.
How so?
For self-expression, for finding community, building connections, things they might not find easily offline. It can be a space for agency.
So it's not always just about the money. It can be identity, community.
Mm-hmm.
That's a perspective you don't always hear.
Exactly. It adds that layer of complexity.
Now, you said earlier, demand for porn in the Philippines isn't exactly new, right? It existed before the internet.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The history matters here. Before digital, it was mostly, wealthier people importing magazines, videos, that kind of thing.
Right.
And believe it or not, there were times when pornography was actually like a revenue stream for media companies that were struggling financially.
No kidding. Okay, so there's a history there. And what about Filipino scholars looking at it now? Legally? Socially?
Well, someone like Dr. Rolando Tolentino, he's pointed out how local filmmakers are still involved in that subcontracting for international productions.
Even though it's illegal in the Philippines itself.
Exactly, which just highlights that tension, right, between the law and the economic reality.
Yeah.
Then you have others like Dr. Jeme Gatula, who raises concerns about rising consumption and what that might mean for families, for mental health.
So different viewpoints, obviously. It's that clash again, isn't it? Economic drivers versus legal rules and social worries.
It really is. And then Dr. Zarina Saloma Akpedono's research looks at how the platforms themselves, the digital spaces, are actually changing sexual norms and behaviors.
So it's not just access, it's influence.
Right. How technology is kind of reshaping how people understand and express sexuality. It's constantly evolving.
Okay, so let's talk about that societal response more directly. You've got strong conservative values. The Catholic Church is huge. How does this boom in online adult stuff land?
Generally, not well. The dominant view is pretty negative, heavily influenced by the church.
Which sees it as, what, a threat?
Yeah, basically a threat to the sanctity of sex within marriage, to the traditional family unit. That moral stance is really powerful in shaping public opinion and support for keeping it illegal.
Because it is illegal, right?
Yeah.
Under the revised penal code.
Correct. Pornography is outlawed. Full stop.
And yet, the consumption rates we started with are incredibly high. It's such a paradox.
It really is. You have this strong official stance, strong moral condemnation, but then this massive private engagement online.
A real disconnect.
Yeah, it points to this ongoing, maybe uneasy negotiation happening within Filipino society, trying to balance sexuality, modernity, tradition, all that stuff.
Is there any sign that's changing, though? Is it becoming, more accepted? More normalized, maybe?
There are maybe hints, subtle shifts. I mean, the stigma is definitely still there, big time.
Sure.
But the fact that it's more visible, maybe more discussed, especially among women, that could suggest attitudes are slowly evolving. But it's slow, and it's definitely not widespread acceptance.
And the impact on young people. That must be a huge concern for parents, educators.
Oh, absolutely. A major point of anxiety. Some studies do show increasing rates of premarital sex among youth.
And the internet's where they get information, right?
Yeah.
Or misinformation.
Exactly. It's a primary source for learning about sex, relationships, for better or worse.
And we have to touch on the really, really dark side of this, too. Child exploitation.
Yes. We absolutely have to. It's horrific. But the Philippines has been identified as a major global source and hub for online child sexual exploitation material, OCSM.
Just awful.
Awful. And it's led to the government declaring what they call an all-out war against it. But it's incredibly difficult to fight in this complex online world, The anonymity, the global reach.
Yeah.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah. A truly devastating aspect of all this.
Yeah.
Okay, let's circle back to the economics for a moment. Poverty seems like such a core piece of this puzzle.
It really does. When good jobs are scarce, when poverty is widespread, the money that can be made, potentially, in online adult work becomes, very tempting for some.
Even with the risks and the stigma.
Even with all that, yeah. The lack of other viable options is a powerful force.
We sometimes hear about the Bagong Bayani idea in the Philippines, the new heroes. usually referring to overseas workers sending money home. Does that kind of cultural idea about family duty connect here at all?
It's a sensitive comparison, obviously, given the context. But you could argue that for some people involved, especially maybe those working abroad in related industries, that deep sense of obligation to provide for family, that desire to send money back, it could be a motivator, even if the work itself is heavily stigmatized back home. It's complicated.
And the money itself. We mentioned the $1,000 scenes, but what about platforms like OnlyFans? Is everyone getting rich?
Oh, definitely not. It's hugely variable. Some top creators, sure, they can make a lot, but many people earn very little.
Right.
And it's important to contrast it with offline sex work, too. There was an estimate in 2013, something like 500,000 sex workers in the Philippines.
Wow.
Many likely facing really exploitative situations, low pay, dangerous conditions. So for some, moving online might actually offer a bit more control, maybe more safety, potentially more economic empowerment. But it's not a guarantee.
Okay. So we talk about subcontracting. What are the other main ways people actually get into creating this content online?
Well, the platforms themselves are key. OnlyFans, Patreon, various camming sites. They make it relatively easy for individuals to just start creating and selling directly.
Cuts out the middleman in a way.
In many cases, yes.
Yeah.
But then tragically, you also have direct recruitment, even trafficking.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to children. That's a horrific entry point.
Right.
And you might also see people who are involved in, say, dancing or traditional sex work, kind of transitioning over to online platforms.
Right. So lots of different paths in. It really is incredibly complex, isn't it?
It is.
You've got money issues, tech access, culture shifts, all bumping up against laws that say no.
Exactly. High use, high condemnation. It's this constant push and pull, these really stark contrasts living side by side.
So if someone's listening to this, what's the main takeaway? What should we be thinking about after this deep dive?
I think fundamentally it shows we need a much more nuanced conversation about it all. About sexuality, about economic pressures, about agency. In the specific context of the Philippines, there just aren't simple answers.
No, definitely not. Okay, on that note, maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over. When you have a society where these online platforms offer real economic lifelines for some people, but those lifelines clash head-on with really deep-seated moral beliefs and actual laws, what kind of long-term changes could bubble up from that tension? What does that friction eventually lead to? Something to think about.